We are preparing for live and setting up, and we are currently live on YouTube. All right, we are going to get started here now. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome, and thank you for joining today's town hall meeting, brought to you by the National Institute of Minority Economic Development's Research Policy and Impact Center. I am Talitha Batts, Director of RPIC. We are physically located at 114 West Parish Street in Durham, North Carolina. The Research Policy and Impact Center has taken on a new look, new agenda, and overall new operational plan. After our meeting today, we invite you to go to our website where you will find research and data aligning with our 4 areas of emphasis: healthcare, education, housing and community development, and of course, small business. You will also find the replay of our forum today, as well as the replay of our previous town hall meetings. We also ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can follow us on all of our social media and stay informed of our future meetings, research, and data. RPIC has partnered with North Carolina Central University's WNCU 90.7 FM, and they will moderate today. We are joined by Ms. Lakeisha Freeman, their general manager, who is responsible for the overall management and operation of the station and its student training and professional initiatives. Thank you so much for helping us out today, Lakeisha. We are so excited to have you. And I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our panelists and to proceed with our town hall meeting this morning. Thank you so much. Lakeisha, I'm going to ask you to take yourself off mute, and we're going to have a couple of technical difficulties as we go through, and that was just our first one. So we are good to go now that we're off mute. Thank you for joining us, Lakeisha.
Thank you so much, Talitha. And again, I have the honor and privilege of introducing our first speaker. It is the awesome Kevin J. Price, who is the president and CEO of National Institute of Minority Economic Development. Kevin joined the Institute, a nonprofit management consulting and services firm focused on business diversity and inclusion in 2020. A Greensboro, North Carolina native, he is only the 3rd leader of the Institute's 34-year history. He joined the Institute as a veteran business leader in healthcare, supplier diversity, faith-based affordable housing, community development, and commercial banking operations. As president and chief executive officer, he is responsible for leading a team of trusted advisors to businesses, large and small, government agencies, policymakers, and organizations that understand the key roles diversity, inclusion, and equity play in ensuring businesses and economic success. So without further ado, I introduce to you the one and only Kevin J. Price.
Well, good morning, everyone. And Lakeisha, thank you for that great introduction. You always do such a great job at that. I need to have you kind of follow me around and do introductions for me. So I really appreciate that. Hopefully you all can hear me fine. A thumbs up from someone. Great. And hopefully you can see my slide deck. I am going to put it in presentation mode so we can see. Before I get started, let me just first of all thank um, Lakeisha again, you for being a great partner of ours at the Institute and the work North Carolina Central is doing with us. We really, excuse me, really appreciate that. And to our esteemed guest this morning, Mike Ariola, I appreciate you being here representing SBA as district director. So thank you for being here. And Roberta McCullough, who is a trusted colleague of mine who is helping lead the efforts at ICAP, our Community Development Financial Institution. So I think we've got some really good things to talk about this morning, but none of that would be possible without the work that Talitha, you're doing. So thank you for coordinating this this morning. And so you all, let me just start with my commercial because I always have to share with you who the Institute is for those of you who are new to our channel, new to understanding who the Institute is and what we're about. This is kind of my, I would say 30-second, but it's longer than that, commercial about who we are. But the Institute is the Institute of Minority Economic Development. We've been in existence now for 35 years this year. So we're not new at the work we do. And that work is really centered around our mission, which is to strengthen the asset base of diverse populations through policy work, through education, and providing economic opportunities. That's what we do. That's who we are. And so we do that through a number of activities and programs that the Institute is engaged in. But what I would suggest is our core business is really technical assistance that we provide and capacity building to diverse businesses, that being minority and women-owned businesses, in addition to the research, policy, and impact work that Talitha leads, and then providing financial resources for not only diverse businesses, but for affordable housing throughout our footprint which you see there in the bottom right. So we're pretty busy. We're covering multiple states. We're engaged in as high a level as possible through multiple offices in Raleigh, Charlotte, Durham, Richmond, Virginia, Washington, D.C., but then we have activities in other states that you see there as well. Two states that you don't see that are growth markets for us are South Carolina and Tennessee. So those are to come. And so I point that out because it's important for you to understand how all of this fits together and how the Institute collaborates internally as well as externally to provide the best level of service we can to the community we're here to serve. And so where I would ask you to focus your efforts is in that middle place of this house. And so all of these brands you see on the right are brands of the Institute. And often people say, well, I didn't realize you all were involved in all of that. I may know one women's business center, but I didn't realize you had three. Or I knew about the Small Business Transportation Resource Center, but I didn't realize you had a policy center and so many women's business centers. So that's why it's important for me to share this with you so you know how this all fits together. It's also important because last year when we began this journey in 2020, it was pretty dire. You think back to 2020, there was fear that was running rampant across the country, including North Carolina. Of what do we do? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Businesses are shutting down. The government was responding as quickly as they could, but trying to get their arms around just what we were dealing with. And how do we react in a way that saves businesses and saves jobs? And so one of the first things we did as an organization was start to commission surveys to understand that through the Policy Center and their work. And that was important because it is through understanding the facts that we could then respond in an appropriate and responsible way. And so we did that. And you all saw as a result of that, some of the work we did. But that included others as well. The Center for Entrepreneurship, where our women's business centers sit, and the SBTRC were responding with providing technical assistance and support to businesses. But we went further than that. We merged in the middle of a pandemic. Think about that. You know, I was always told that it is through crisis that provides opportunity. And that was true for us last year. So in the middle of a pandemic, we said we have to respond at an even greater level than we had in the past. So we merged with a community development financial institution so that we not only did the core work of providing technical assistance and capacity building for diverse businesses, but now we have the ability to provide financial resources. That's huge. That's a game changer. And it happened in the middle of a pandemic. But we didn't stop there. We also added a Center for Professional Services because corporations were reaching out saying, we want to do more. What can we do? And you're a trusted partner of ours. Can you help us with diversity, equity, and inclusion and supplier diversity? So we're helping them in that space. But then cities also started reaching out saying, we need to do more to support minority businesses in our local community. And we need a partner who knows this business and who's been here a long time, not someone who just hung out a shingle yesterday, but someone who has a track record, a trusted track record to partner with us. And we're responding to communities that are asking for help. So that's the work that's happening in the Center for Professional Services. So how does all of this fit together? Well, what we saw last year were these headlines. That was scary. Headlines about 40% of minority, African American in particular, businesses being lost as a result of the pandemic. A month later, it started creeping up even more. But it wasn't just African American businesses. The Latin community was hit as well. And we saw somewhere around 38% of Hispanic businesses also get in trouble. So we knew we had to respond at a different way by looking at how we could capitalize on the relationships we have and grow in a different way. And so what led to some of this? Well, I would suggest there were a couple factors that we saw happen. Number one, there was this lack of capital that is chronic for diverse businesses, minority businesses, women-owned businesses in particular. They lack capital. So when you go into a crisis, it's very difficult to navigate those waters. But then secondly, there was a lack of banking relationship. And I would always say that, and many of you may have heard me say this, that there's a difference between having a bank account and having a banking relationship. There has to be someone wherever you bank that knows your business. And I'm not talking about the teller. The teller takes your deposit and gives you money back. You need someone in that bank who thinks about your business and can connect your business with the products the bank offers. So that's a banking relationship at a different level. And when crisis comes, that's the person that you need to lean on. But then the other thing that we noticed was there was a lot of suspicion out there. And so we had to break down some of those things to get past that. And so we built this coalition last year of trusted partners of ours, started doing surveys, and it revealed a lot of interesting things. But it was important for us to address this holistically as possible, looking at how the pandemic and the downturn in the economy was impacting minority, women, veteran, LGBT-owned businesses, as well as disabled-owned businesses. So we didn't just limit it to one segment, but we wanted to get a good cross-section of how it was impacting diverse businesses. Interestingly, some of the results of our surveys have been fairly consistent. And here are the results. What we know nationally is that generally MBEs tend to be sole proprietors. A good 90% of them are sole proprietors. That was very similar in the results of our survey. 94% had less than 10 employees. That's also very consistent with national trends. And we're talking about 1,000 responses here. So these weren't small numbers, but we tried to get as many people to respond to our survey as possible over last year and into this year. So we had a really good sample statistically. We also noticed that more than 50% of the businesses have been in business over 5 years. Now, why is that important? Because these are mainstays in our community. These aren't brand new businesses. They've been there a while. They've been hiring people. They've been spending their resources in communities. They're established businesses. And even with that, we saw challenges. So we can't just focus on startups. We've got to also make sure we shore up businesses who've been out there for some time. 88% experienced the loss of revenue. So the majority of the companies felt the pandemic and this downturn in the economy last year. An interesting tidbit that came out of the latest survey was that 80% relied upon some type of relief funding to get through the pandemic. That was startling to me. And that form of support could have been at the local level because many cities had some type of loan product. Many counties started developing a loan product, as well as the state and the federal government. So we knew that there were lots of products out there in the market, and many companies took advantage of some portion, some type of funding out there, which I think also helped with only 66% had not laid off anyone. So that support kept businesses afloat and allowed them to keep their employees in place. So what was different? One of the startling things that I noticed this time was if you look at the top right in terms of the industries that responded to us, it was a bit lopsided this time. 38% came from professional services. And then 62% was different industries that were represented. I think this was probably the most lopsided I've seen in some time. In the past, it had been a little bit more balanced in terms of health and human services and consulting and construction and real estate, all being balanced out with professional services. But I don't know what to make of that quite yet, that it was so off balance this time, but it did concern me a bit to see this happen. Also, interestingly, was the bottom pie there that shows you how many of those industries tapped into PPP. And I'm sure Mike will expand on this at some point. So Mike, I'm gonna try not to steal your thunder. But I think there's a correlation here when you look at the top industries that received PPP versus the industries that responded to the survey. There's some similarities there with professional services showing up, real estate agents showing up, beauty salons. And I'm fortunate enough to have several relatives, including sisters, who have beauty salons, who were pounding on me saying, you gotta do more. You gotta do more. I'm gonna have to get money from you. And so, we had to respond then. So jokingly, but we're gonna do what we need to support businesses. And then restaurants was also hit pretty hard and got through that process. So some interesting statistics that came out of that. So how do we respond to this? Knowing that as we come out of this pandemic, minority businesses have to be a part of the solution. They have to be a part of how we get out of this and rebuild our economy and get right-sided. And fortunately, the surveys we've done, the state through the North Carolina Hub Office and the governor's office saw those reports and responded with development of Retool NC, which was not a loan program, it was a grant program. And you can see there, our first wave was $12 million. We received the first week of October, and through Roberta's team, we provided grants from the first week of October until right before Thanksgiving. We gave away $12 million. not just the Institute, but our partner was Carolina Small Business Development Fund. We each got $6 million apiece. That was an average to those 500 businesses of about $20,000. That's significant because it then allowed the businesses to leverage those dollars to stay in business, continue to keep their employees in place, and then even think about how they pivot and grow and change their business model to take advantage of the crisis. A smaller second wave came in. The governor was shocked that we put that money out so fast and found another $1 million of CARES Act dollars and gave that to the Institute. We put that out in 2 weeks to another 100 businesses. So just amazing work that ICAP is doing to support businesses. And now we're preparing for wave 3, which we should have in, I would think, less than 90 days. The numbers are all over the place right now. We're waiting for the budget to be finalized with the state. It could be as much as 20 million or as little as 8 million. We don't know yet. But what I would encourage each of you to do is make sure you're HUB certified. Do that now. And make sure you're, if not HUB, you're DBE certified. And get prepared for this next round. And so I'm going to stop there and just say this as a suggestion. Number one, we're all coming out of this crisis. We got to believe that and we got to speak that. We're coming out of this crisis. There are partners out there, the SBA, the Institute, SBTDCs, and many others who are prepared and ready to support you. So we are going to come out of this crisis. But then secondly, I need you all to start thinking about how we pivot for growth now. Last year was about survival, and we did that. You survived. A bit scathed, a little bit bruised, but you survived. But now we got to pivot and think about growth. And remember what I said, it's through crisis that comes opportunity. So what is your opportunity right now? So think about that. And then lastly, I'll just say to you, you've got to act. Make fear press you to act and do something that is significant, that pivots your business and moves you in a different direction. So I'm going to stop there and just encourage you all to continue to do the work you're doing, and let's partner together and make North Carolina even stronger economically.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for that wonderful presentation and just so much great information that I'm sure our listeners will take heed of. Thank you so much again. Our next speaker is Mike Areola. Mike is currently the director of SBA, where he oversees an office that drives economic development by assisting local entrepreneurs with starting and growing businesses. He also directs the implementation of SBA programs related to accessing capital, business advising, and government contracts. And here today, Mike is going to talk about the SBA's programming, funding opportunities, and additional options for diverse small businesses. Mike?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lakeisha. Very happy to be here. I want to thank Kevin, Roberta, and Talitha and the gang for hosting me today. The SBA is a U.S. government agency. We were formed in 1953 to help Americans start, develop, and grow and succeed in business. And we do that through 4 program areas. We do that through financing, through our regular programs. We do that through helping small businesses gain a foothold into the federal contracting marketplace. We have a host of entrepreneurial development programs. Kevin was mentioning the Women's Business Centers that are hosted by the Institute. Those are funded in part by the SBA. And finally, we have a host of disaster assistance programs, including the direct disaster loans that the SBA makes available to folks in the aftermath of hurricanes, other natural disasters, as well as COVID. So those are the 4 programs that the SBA has available to help folks, small businesses and otherwise. Next slide, please. Yeah, let me give a recap of all the various COVID economic relief options that we have had available, and then I'll turn into an update in terms of where we are with them. The first is the PPP program, provided that you use at least 60% for eligible payroll and at least 40% for remaining expenses such as transportation, utilities, and expenses, you can get that loan forgiven. So that was immensely popular, and I'll say a little bit more about that later. SBA also made available debt relief to existing SBA borrowers. We made that available last year, where the government footed the bill for up to 6 months worth of debt payments for existing SBA borrowers. And with the current round of funding, we're able to provide up to 3 months of debt relief, where the government picks up the tab for 3 months principal and interest, up to $9,000 per loan. That's kind of like the unsung hero in a lot of our COVID relief programs, because a whole lot of people don't know about that. But those who did take out SBA loans of all kinds really did know about that. And the best thing about it is these borrowers didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to apply. SBA just communicated with the lenders and said, here, send us the bill. We'll pick up the tab. Then there are direct payments from the SBA, including the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Over a term of about 30 years, folks can take advantage of low interest long-term financing for a variety of general working capital purposes, unlike PPP, which you can get it forgiven as long as you meet certain payroll criteria, et cetera. Together with that, SBA made available advances or free grant money last year up to about $10,000. This year, we reinstituted that, but as Congress directed us, they said, okay, folks who felt like they were shortchanged last year, they didn't get the full $10,000 they were expecting, we can allow them to apply for up to $10,000 this year. And then an additional $5,000 on top of that through the supplemental targeted advance if they qualify. Here's the thing, last year, they were able to apply for up to $10,000. This year, Congress said, we can have folks take advantage of additional advances, but they have to meet the low income area requirement, as well as the economic need, meaning that they had to have evidenced at least a 30% drop in revenues during a certain 8-week period. And it's for that reason that SBA is reviewing every single one of those applications to make sure that they meet those criteria. That's the number one thing that explains why it's a little bit slower this year as opposed to last year. And then finally, the other grant programs we have available are the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program and the Restaurant Revitalization Program. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program for live entertainment venues, museums, almost anything of a live performance nature that was shuttered as a result of the pandemic. And then also the very immensely popular Restaurant Revitalization Program, which unfortunately, as a result of ongoing litigation, I'm unable to say a whole lot about that particular program. Next slide, please. So where are we now? PPP closed about a month ago to new applicants, so we're working through the remainder of those applicants, and today is when SBA is supposed to arrive at its final decision in terms of approvals and such. EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, those can be accepted up until the end of the year, so that's still available to everybody if you weren't able to get a PPP loan. Targeted advance, supplemental targeted advance, I said a little bit about that just a moment ago. Those are available. With targeted advance, initially we emailed those that received the less than 10,000 last year. That is now opened up to everybody. You have to apply through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Portal in order to get both that and then qualify for the supplemental. Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program, those are still being accepted. And we just started notifying folks of their awards beginning May 26th. The Restaurant Revitalization Fund portal has already closed. And then the debt relief program we have available, that ends September 30th. Next slide. So how much money is are our people in North Carolina getting? Year to date, this includes last year's PPP loans. Almost 270,000 small businesses took advantage of about 18 billion in total financing. That is a huge amount of financing. In a normal non-COVID year, SBA does about 1,000 loans, totaling almost 1 billion. But look at just that dollar amount of 18 billion. We did 18 years worth of loans in the span of about 16, 17 months. So there was obviously a lot of demand for that. We did our best to fulfill that need. Economic injury disaster loans, quite a bit less, but that is still very much active. The advances from last year totaled about 470 million. So those were extremely popular. Targeted advances still ongoing. 33 million has been dispersed. Supplemental 11 million so far has been dispersed. There's still a lot of funding left under those targeted advance programs, and we're doing our best to do outreach and awareness to let folks know that, yeah, you can still apply. That's another option. In case you were disappointed that you weren't able to get a PPP loan, there's the economic injury disaster loan still available. Also, the targeted advance, that's free money. Take advantage of that by all means. Shuttered venue operators grant, about 47 of those have been approved statewide for about $24 million so far. And that is just, starting to trickle in. Restaurant Revitalization Fund, again, unable to comment due to ongoing litigation with that. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to say a little bit, I'm trying to be mindful of my time here. I want to say a little bit about the Paycheck Protection Program. Last year, it was extremely difficult to come across some reliable data, and it still is. The reason why it's hard to come across reliable data is because SBA, the government, cannot legally require folks to disclose their demographic characteristics. So we cannot say, as a condition of your loan, you have to tell me what your race or ethnicity says. We cannot do that without congressional authorization. And that explains why there were so many of these questions that were unanswered, and that do not really give us a good picture as to, how many of these folks are we reaching in terms of minorities and such. What I did is I highlighted in yellow, though, those are the national statistics for 2020-21's round of PPP financing. And just take a look at those big numbers. In terms of gender, over half of the folks did not even disclose their gender. 4.7 million out of 6.7 million did not answer the question as to race. So those are huge, huge gaps that SBA had to still confront in terms of getting this demographic data, which is extremely important. Next slide. So what I did is I totally discounted those unanswered questions to arrive at what would be a more realistic measure of how many of our minority folks, this is national stats, are in fact being served. So discounting those that did not answer, it looks a little bit more reflective of reality. 8% Asian American Pacific Islanders, 42% Black or African American, and about 47% white or Caucasian folks in terms of those who answered the question as to their race, and then 11% ethnicity being Hispanic or Latino. So those numbers are a little bit more closer to reality. Like I said, we're not where I think we should be in terms of requiring or getting a hold of reliable demographic statistics, but we're close. Next slide, please. Okay. In terms of improving lending to the underserved, I think all things considered, I think we have made some improvements in terms of lending to socially disadvantaged folks. We tried to improve the collection of racial and demographic data by putting that question way at the top of the application forms. We still can't make it mandatory, but the best we could do is to draw some attention to the fact that that's very important. Throughout the entire pandemic, SBA, your North Carolina district office of the SBA has been very intentional about reaching out to minority groups to make sure that they get their fair share of COVID relief financing. And I think everybody on this webinar that are co-hosting with me saw that. First with my predecessor, Thomas Stith, who was extremely intentional about reaching out to minority folks, and then continuing with me. And I'm continuing to make this a personal mission of mine to make sure that our underserved, in fact, are properly served by the SBA. This gets back to one of Kevin's statistics, the idea of sole proprietors and stuff. We did things such as clarified the eligibility for 1099s and that sort of thing. And we enabled folks to use the gross rather than the net income on their Schedule C to allow for a higher loan amount on PPP. While we have not been able to reach all the community financial institutions that we wanted to, we were also intentional about trying to enlist as many of our community financial institution partners as possible to help make PPP loans in particular available to folks. One of the big things that we learned is that minority folks, not everybody has a bank account. So where do these folks have their accounts? Who do they interface with? Where do they keep their lending relations and depository relationships? Community financial statement institutions are the first that come to mind. And that would include M&F Bank, Self-Help Credit Union, Mountain BizWorks, all of these folks with whom socially disadvantaged persons have their accounts, but also they would be the first ones to turn to. So we were really intentional about including them at the application process as well and giving them priority periods to apply for PPP loans. I think I'm a little bit over my 10 minutes, but I do want to spend, just one more minute, maybe touching on a couple of things. I really like what Kevin said about when he broke out that pie chart that showed like 32%, went to beauty salons, and that reminded me of something. Taylor Woods, who is the president of Ashtay Hair Care Products up in Greensboro, is one of our success stories. Excuse me. Her family business makes hair care products for minority folks. She, in addition to getting a PPP and an EIDL herself for her business, her customers are beauty salons and folks in the hair care universe. She took it upon herself to hold webinars to teach these folks how to fill out the economic injury disaster loan forms and the PPP forms. She made herself available to her customers, and she called the SBA to do some webinars, to do some intensive outreach to them. And I think that is a wonderful success story I wanted to share with folks. And it gets to Kevin's initial point about we as socially disadvantaged folks need to take ownership and be proactive and take action, to help avail ourselves of these things and to help those in our community. Taylor Woods, I think, is a shining example of doing that, just for folks within her own industry. So I just wanted to share that. Next slide, please. And next slide. The best way to reach us is by email at charlotte.nc@sba.gov. Next slide. Oh, let's go to the resources, the page before. There we go. Yeah, SBA is a sponsor of the SBTDC, Small Business Technology Development Center, 15 centers statewide. There are 10 chapters of SCORE. There's the one Veterans Business Outreach Center at Fayetteville State. There are the 5 women's business centers funded by SBA. The newest one is at Winston-Salem State, our very first women's business center at an HBCU. And finally, the small business centers throughout the state at all the various community colleges are not sponsored by SBA, but we do an immense amount of outreach with them through their network. That's it for me. I've gone a little bit over time, but I'll turn it over back to you, Lakeisha.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike, for all the great work that you and your team are doing at SBA. We really appreciate all of that information. Our next speaker is Roberta McCullough. Roberta serves as Senior Vice President of Operations for the Institute Capital, also known as ICAP, a CDFI program for the National Institute of Minority Economic Development. She leads her team to provide pre-development and gap financing for affordable housing developers and funding for small businesses and other community-based organizations. ICAP engages in HBCU collaboration through funding considerations for future entrepreneurs in their student bodies. McCullough has continually served the community and economic development industry for over 30 years to alleviate system economic injustices, providing access to capital. She holds a BS in mathematics from Shaw University. And without delay, I present to you Roberta McCullough.
Good. I guess it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Lakeisha. I am just happy to be a part of this presentation. Thank you, Mike, for all of your valuable information on SBA products. And certainly thank you, Kevin, who is our fearless leader with not only with the Institute, but also with what we are affectionately known as ICAP. So the Institute merged with another nonprofit last summer to adopt and bring in the lending arm of the Institute, which is called Institute Capital. The former name was a longer name, but the shorter version of it was Initiative Capital that was held under another nonprofit. And so we found it necessary and important that the Institute have closed that full circle of services by bringing on the lending arm, which is now Institute Capital. We merged, as Kevin mentioned, last summer, and we did our official relaunch of our lending services in April of this year. And we are just absolutely excited because we have already seen the need from our partners referring folks to us, and just really through word of mouth. And I have to say that, you know, we just kind of took a soft launch approach because we wanted to enter the market in a responsible and effective way. But even with just with the words from our other, support from our other CDFI partners in the state, from SBA and others who refer clients to us, we have amassed a pretty respectful pipeline of clients that are deserving of working capital to maintain their businesses. We, as Kevin and Mike mentioned, we have 3 women's business centers, one which is in the state of Virginia, but for the sake of this conversation, there are 2 within North Carolina that refer clients to us, along with our Small Business Transportation Resource Center that Kevin mentioned. And we have a very robust internal collaboration of making sure that those clients that receive technical assistance also get the lending that they deserve. And then also our external partners have supported us immensely. So we are excited to be a part of this, this full-fledged collaboration of making a difference in these communities that we serve. I mentioned again that we do, our focus primarily is on affordable housing development growth, and that is to the developers. We provide some pre-development funding. We don't fund the entire projects because we want to be the person that helps get that project initiated and established and move on to the next one. So we want to get our investment in and get it out so we can have a greater impact. And then also there's some opportunity for us to do some layered financing, some gap financing on the back end to ensure that that project is fulfilled. So you can see us on the front end and you'll see us in the end as well. And then secondly, of course, to small businesses, I can't begin to name the industries that we will support, but I'll talk a little bit in just a minute about some of our products that we do offer, and I'll do it on a kind of high level view. Certainly with HBCUs, we look to collaborate with them in many ways, to include Central, of course, NC Central, by providing some funding to those budding entrepreneurs as we grow out our learning lab that we'll talk about at another time that supports HBCU collaboration. There are many rising juniors and seniors that have fantastic ideas and can grow these into a real bona fide business. I actually have a son who did that very thing, so I know it works. And so we want to support that. So next slide, please. So I'm going to go right into the heart of the matter, because when you're talking to a lender, most people, what they just want to know is what can you do for me? And so I'm going to give a high level view of the products that we offer. And I will say that we are not new to lending, although we did just merge and do our relaunch, but Institute Capital, formerly Initiative Capital, has been around for over 20 years. So we are not new to the lending industry. So we will do some microloans for our clients, and you can see, and I can provide this as needed, or like I guess you can make it available if people need just a visual, which oftentimes we do. We can do microloans and other larger loans. Microloans tend to be under 50,000. Other loans are over 50,000, and just depending on the experience of the business and or the length of the business, it will determine how much we can do and the strength of them. I talked about the affordable housing pre-development work and gap financing. We certainly are indebted to our former co-founder, Ms. Harris. She had a true focus on affordable housing development, a true focus on HBCU collaboration, and that is where the mission for ICAP is embedded. And so these are the things that we want to see done, and we have had a great response in this particular arena in terms of developers that are focused on affordable housing. I don't know if you all know, and I don't have the numbers, but there is not a urban city or rural area that does not have an affordable housing crisis. And it's only getting worse. And so we're going to continue to do our part to make sure that we can make an impactful difference. So next slide, please. So the other thing, we want to know how to apply. When people talk about loans, we get calls, emails daily about how do I apply? Where can I go? This is our homepage where you can go to apply. There's two links on there to apply, or you can go straight to our LoanWell platform, which is what we use. We are in the 21st century, so our applications are web-based. You upload all your documents through the web portal. We are available to assist you in getting through that process. This is just a general list of things that we may need from you. It is most important. I've been in lending for 3 decades, and it is most important that if you want a loan, that you definitely want to have your supporting documents. If not, it is an incomplete application and it just won't be fulfilled. And I'm sure Mike can attest to that as well. So when we ask you for documents, we're not being bothersome. We want to have a complete picture because we want to be able to serve you in the best manner possible. So again, we can make this available as you need it. And next screen. And I'm going to be real short and sweet so we can get back on track with time. But this is my team. We are lean and mean. And I tell you what, I have a great team. And we have Dwayne Bryant, who is our business development specialist. Dwayne is everywhere, and he has done an amazing job in reaching out to the state and making people aware that we are open again for business, and we're just excited about that. Mr. T.F. Coggleton is our lending officer, has been in the industry for many, many years, and just can take that loan. And if there's a loan in there, he is going to find it, and when we're going to make it happen. And then Irma Alvarez Urbina, who you will most likely talk to, the first point of contact when you call us. And she is our funding processor. Together, we just bring a wealth of experience to you all. We are just excited to be the lending arm of the Institute. That I don't take that lightly, because I just know the history on the Institute, and I know the mission that has been ingrained for 35 years. And so we, as we grow our region and our efforts, we'll continue to fulfill the policy work and the fulfillment of access to capital that our founders intended for us to do. So I hope that got us back on track, because I just want to be short and sweet. Kevin did a lot of the work for me, so thank you, Kevin, for introducing Institute Capital. But just please give us a call. Our contact info is on the screen. I'm sure that Talitha will make it available to those who would like it. And we just look forward to serving you in the days and the weeks and the months to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roberta. That was definitely wonderful information that you provided. And the one thing that I noted is that have your documentation. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn things over to Talitha Batts, who is the Director of Research Policy and the Impact Center at the North Carolina Institute of Minority Economic and Development. Talitha?
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. I appreciate that. And thank you to all the panelists. And so we're going to roll right into, for the sake of time, our Q&A. And we do have a couple of questions that have come in that we want to focus on. Our first question, I'm going to turn over to Kevin. Kevin, we have been asked that in phase 3 that you were referring to, are there any confirmed dates or information around the application process to the funding that that you were referring to in the phase 3 process?
So Talitha, thank you for that question, and thank you for our listener for offering that question. So we're still working through that. I think the first wave of that wave will be those that are already in the pipeline that we're still trying to serve. And so I mentioned that we served about 500, more than 500 total. The Institute supported more than 300 of those. And within the pipeline currently, there are over 1,700. So we have a lot more in the pipeline to support. We just ran out of resources. And so this new funding allocation will help us continue to reach out to those that are in the pipeline. And then once we exhaust that, hopefully we'll be closer to that $20 million number. So we'll have enough to support those that are in the pipeline and open it up to new applicants. But it's important that even with new applicants, they have the certification so they're prepared.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Our next question is going to Mike Areola with the SBA. Mike, we have here, since PPP has closed, how does EIDL, sorry about that, program work as an alternative, and are the loans forgivable like PPP?
Yeah, thank you so much, Talitha. First of all, let me preface this by saying, go to our website. It contains everything, sba.gov/relief. sba.gov/relief. You will find all of our COVID relief programs there, including EIDL. Click on the EIDL button, and that will prompt you with an online application process. The big thing, of course, is that PPP is forgivable, but EIDL is not. It's a direct loan for which you are obligated to pay. And I've gotten a couple of questions. Well, why isn't EIDL forgivable? Well, because Congress has not authorized us to be able to forgive that. So that's an issue to take up with our congressional leadership. So that would be the distinction. EIDL, you've got 30 years to repay that at very low rates of interest, 3.75 if you're a business, 2.75 if you're a nonprofit. So the fact that you're stretching out payments over 30 years means that you have a relatively low loan payment. So it's very much an option that is still available to folks.
And the second question, Mike, back to you is, I've heard that it takes such a long time with the Shuttered Venue Operations Grant Program. Why is that? And is there a remedy that is coming down the pipeline soon?
Yeah, I think, when I put up that slide with a snapshot of, how many loans, whatever, I think people probably guessed, wow, only, what was it, 47, I think? Only 47 SVOGs approved?
Yes.
The reason why it's a lot slower is the way that Congress passed the legislation, and it has to do with the ability of nonprofits to apply. That dictated to SBA that we have to structure it as a competitive grant award program. Unlike Restaurant Revitalization Fund or Targeted Advance, you just fill out your application, that's it. This one is a lot more involved because we had to structure it as a competitive grant program the way the legislation was written. And it's for that reason that quite a bit more paperwork and a lot more due diligence is required on our part to review these things. That's the single biggest reason why it's taking so much longer. That explains why we've only got like 47 of those so far, whereas Restaurant Revitalization Fund was going like that. that would explain, the difference between the two, why one is taking so much longer than the other. But thank you for the question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that concludes actually a lot of our questions that have come through the chat. Did anyone on our panel want to conclude with any information about your program? If you would, that would be, if not, then that would be the conclusion of our Q&A. And we would just turn it back over to Kevin to give us a little bit of information about ENC and to just kind of give our audience a brief or a highlight of what the Institute has coming up and the activities and how they can be involved in our amazing conference that's coming up in August.
So thank you, Talitha. For those of you who are familiar with the Institute and have been following us for years, you all will remember we used to hold an annual conference every year called the Executive Networking Conference. It was in Pinehurst. And then in 2016, we stopped doing the conference. And I thought it was important that we bring that conference back for a number of reasons. Number one, we all need to reconnect with each other. We've been isolated for over a year now. So we need to re-engage with one another. And by August, most of us will be vaccinated. So we'll be in a safe place. There are provisions in place at Pinehurst to keep us safe. Everyone will get a mask, and you'll have enough hand sanitizer that you'll be ashy by the time this conference is over. Trust me. So just come. We need to engage with one another, and we need to talk shop with each other about how we collaborate with other partners around supplier diversity, community economic development, engage our elected officials, our corporate leaders. All of us will be together, bankers, to talk about how we collaborate. Mike, I hope you'll be there. So we'll have the SBA there to talk shop around more resources and how we can plug in with one another. But this is important for us to reconnect with each other. And we'll be at Pinehurst. What better place in North Carolina can you be? We've got course number 2 secured. And just so you all know, course number 2 is what the US Open will use in a couple years. So if you don't play this year on course number 2, you're going to have to wait a few years before you get to it again, because they're going to shut it down and prepare for the US Open, from my understanding. So I would encourage you to come down, engage with us, partner, and let's talk shop with other minority businesses and women-owned businesses about how we can reposition the economy of North Carolina. That's August the 5th through the 8th.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We appreciate that. I'm excited. I know all of you are. And for more information on ENC, you can go to the Institute's website, I think, to get the agenda and also to register. And that's at www.theinstitutenc.org. That's www.theinstitutenc.org. Well, that concludes yet another fantastic town hall meeting. We are so excited that all of you have joined us today for this amazing information-packed hour. We'll have this information available to you on our website. And please subscribe to our channel, follow us on all our social media. And I just, again, want to say thank you so much to all of our panelists. You did an amazing job. We appreciate you, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.